this is the last session of the day, but it is also the most exciting and the most important. And I am delighted to be moderating this panel on intention and impact, and really focused on how business can better our communities. I'm joined today by Max Johnson of Awe Inspired, Orlena Nwokah Blanchard. I hope I did well there.
Blanchard.
Almost.
Yeah.
Joy Collective, and Scott with one T, Tatelman of Statement Bags. And I always like to start any panel with an introduction from the people themselves. So I would love to start with you, Max, and then we can roll from there.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So happy to be here. My name is Max Johnson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Awe Inspired. We're a mission-driven fine jewelry brand best known for our Goddess collection, which celebrates iconic women from history and mythology in timeless heirloom jewelry. We give back 20% of our proceeds to our charity partners, which is mainly what I'm excited to speak with you about today. I'll pass it off to Orlena.
Thank you. And hi, everybody. So my name is Orlena Nwokah Blanchard. I am the president and COO of a company called Joy Collective. We're a cultural insights, marketing, and creative agency based in Washington, D.C., and pride ourselves on doing social impact work that really changes lives for communities that are underrepresented and underestimated in particular. And I will pass it on to Scott with one T.
Yeah. This is becoming a real theme.
It's a thing.
Scott, I am Scott with one T here. My parents didn't want it to be two T's because then it would be Scot Tatelman, which was their call. So here I am. My wife and I are the co-founders of State Bags, and we are a bag brand that makes beautiful products, but more importantly, we started the company because we also run a nonprofit organization that has sent thousands of kids to summer camp, something I very strongly believe in and am kind of who I am because of summer camp, and wanted to support kids in underfunded communities in ways that a lot of for-profit businesses hadn't when we started the company. And we're doing it in ways that I think are very innovative and very thoughtful, and really excited to be here.
Amazing. Thank you. And I want to kick off by getting straight into it. And where better to start? The theme is how can business better our communities? And I would love to hear, what does community mean to you? And I will start with you, Orlena, since you talked about social impact.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I love this. And I'm just excited to be here with my fellow panelists having this discussion, because it is a really important one. For me, community is very much about shared interest, shared experience, and in many respects, shared truth. And so even within a community, while there is diversity, there's a lot that actually allows us to engage in fellowship in that shared truth. And that shared truth tells a story. And I think really understanding that story and sharing the truth of that story is where the fellowship and community comes into play. That's what it means to me. And I think it shows up in the world in a number of different ways and spaces.
Interesting. And Max, you mentioned that your products are inspired, with this long history. I would love to hear your definition of community.
Well, I'm not sure I can phrase it much better than Orlena, but I think something that we have found really inspiring about the work that we do has been our ability to grow community by listening to other people's stories. And I think storytelling is such a crucial part of building community. It's empowering people to share their truths and share their stories and see how we all find alignment. And so, with our products, we're able to see that Hindu worshipers in India and the goddess culture that they've, nurtured for thousands and thousands of years has amazing parallels to native South American goddess culture. And we are able to bring together communities with those shared stories to create new communities. And so I think Orlena really said it best, that so much is really around giving a space to share their own truths and, the ability to make connections with others where there's similarities.
Brilliant. Scott, based on Orlena and Max, what are your reflections? And I can imagine, similarly to Max, yours is also a tangible product. So what does community mean for Statement Bags?
State bags. It does make a statement, but it's state bags. So, I mentioned before that our company was started and inspired by our nonprofit organization that serves kids in East New York, Brooklyn, and Bed-Stuy, Red Hook, and the Bronx, and all over New York City. So community for me is really important, because when I started spending a lot of time in those neighborhoods, it was very clear to me that there was kind of this like misunderstanding of, just because these neighborhoods were in need, quote unquote, that they were crime ridden, and that they were, there was no love there and all this stuff. And I absolutely became infatuated with spending time there, because there was so much pride, and there was so much community, and there was so much love. And so I just wanted to keep doing more and more for these types of communities and neighborhoods. So when that organization started to grow, and we started to serve more and more kids and open it up to more and more neighborhoods, and then we started our for-profit company in State Bags. I was really bent on making sure that we were doing those communities justice. And similar to what Max just said, like, we never wanted to be a company that just, served communities because they were in need, but that we were actually listening to the needs, and that we were having those conversations, and that we were spending time in those neighborhoods, and we were spending long amounts of time. And we were just fortunate to have our organization and our program that we call Camp Power, where we spend literally a week in the woods with these kids, and we get to understand them and, get to know them in ways that a lot of people can't, just because of how this setup is. And I always just wanted to start a company where they would feel proud of the work that we were doing. And that's what wakes me up every day. And that's what keeps me going, is, being in touch with that community and making them feel like we're doing the work for them.
I mean, that's brilliant. And it's partly the reason it was probably a Freudian slip for me to say Statement Bags. Clearly, you're making a statement with State Bags. And to that point you made, Scott, of serving society, we are all around the world, we've all experienced the impacts of a global pandemic, be it in different shapes. And as we begin to emerge and think about this new world and look towards the future, I would be really interested to know, what do you think is the role of business in society and when it comes to communities? And
I can take, whoever wants to go, I'm happy to jump in.
Go for it.
Okay. I'm a big believer that, even before, last spring, when everybody started to figure out what their voice was, and to, kind of chime in on everything that was happening in this country and, internationally too, that if you have a business and if you have a platform, you have a responsibility. And I understand that everybody's values and, interests and passions are different, and there's boards and there's investors and all of those things. But I feel like at this moment in time, there are so many people who need help, who aren't just going to get it from the nonprofit space, but we are seeing big results from the for-profits who are able to actually put together authentic missions and listen first, act second types of approaches to those missions. And it's something that I truly believe in because I've seen it done. And I think what's happening now is that because this like pressure has been built in a very short amount of time, there's a lot of companies that are rushing to figure out what their voice is and to figure out what their mission is. And customers right now are very savvy as to like what's real and what isn't, which is good because it's filtering out the actual impactful ones versus the ones that are just doing it to check a box. I was never interested in checking a box. I wanted to make sure, like I said before, that those who we were built to serve felt like it was actually making an impact and they were proud of the work that we were doing and that it was actually making a difference for them. So my feeling is that if you start a company, your intention should not just be to make money. Your intention should be to find a community, an organization, a population of people who need help, and to really thoughtfully and strategically and to take the time to build out what that approach is, just like you would for a marketing campaign or financial plans or anything. Your impact should do the same, and you should put the same amount of effort into it as you would anything else in your business.
Yeah, agree. And if I may just build on that, because Scott, I thought that was really well said. I think I agree in terms of business having an important place and responsibility in society. But I think we often talk about business as if it's some inanimate object in some building far, far away in an ivory tower. Business is people, and those people are members of different communities that come together. And business, at least those that are in the for-profit world, are benefiting from the value received from those communities, first from those who are actually servicing and working within that business. So for me, I do think that there's a social obligation to return value because you are taking value from society in that regard. But I also think, going back to your original question and how it ties to that responsibility, is that to me, community is a verb. It's actionable. And Max and Scott have talked about how they are actualizing, right, the connection and the value that we contribute to community. And I think it's really important for businesses to understand that it is the same, that it's not a check you write and that you give and you donate and it's a tax write-off at the end of the year, that it's actually work you do to engage. And I think those businesses that realize that they have more of a personal connection to people and to communities. For example, we work at Joy Collective with a lot of consumer products companies. And those consumer products are personal. They're in your home, right? Whether it's the skincare products you use or something else. So I think for those companies, understanding that there's much more of a personal connection, they're more inclined to recognize the kind of role they play in the larger community and society. But I think it's important, as Scott was saying, for all businesses to recognize that they play a role and they benefit from, you know, how we function as a society, which is a collection of community. Huh?
I'm so impressed with your answers, and it really has my head swirling. My initial reaction to the question about what responsibility businesses have to society, and very much in light of what's happened in this past year, is to eliminate negative externalities. And that's kind of like the economist in me, really thinking about, like, you know, let's sit down and look at not only what does our product do that is positively impactful, but what are the negative impacts of our business existing, right? We're using resources that are not recyclable, or we're portraying images of human bodies that don't reflect realistic beauty standards. I think, you know, we are you know, selling a culture of extravagance and of overconsumption, and like the planet is burning. Like, I think the responsibility is really for all of us to look at our businesses and say, yes, the good may outweigh the bad, but the collective negative externality is not sustainable. And we each have a responsibility to look at all of the negative externalities of the way that we operate and address them systematically. And so that's, again, the economist in me thinking about like my literal utility responsibility to society, and that is to make sure that the net good is as great as possible.
Brilliant. Such thoughtful and deep and meaningful answers. And one of the things that was mentioned, Orlena, you talked about business actually not being separate from society and being a part of the ecosystem. I would love to hear more about how Joy Collective approaches. How does this influence your work and your approach when it comes to brands and campaigns?
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me share, because there's a lot of work that we do that, that we're excited to see grow and scale and people learn more about, because that means more impact. Our role at Joy, and I may have said this earlier, our role is really to help businesses and brands find the nexus of business and society. And one of the ways that we do that is help brands lean deep into their purpose and understand how to make that purpose real and true for all those that they serve. And I'll give you a great example of our work. Some of you may be familiar with the Crown Act, which is it is legislation to end race-based hair discrimination, and it's currently existing in 14 states. In the United States, there's a movement that has extended to the UK. It's a legislative movement that is part of a larger movement to normalize characteristics of race, namely hair in this particular instance, which has been a barrier to social and economic growth. And we were engaged by the Dove brand and an amazing woman who is a champion for beauty equity at Dove and at Unilever, and engaged to do some work to understand and look at their purpose as a business. And their purpose is to say, we believe in beauty equity. We believe that every woman and girl has the right to have a positive experience of beauty. And in checking that purpose, realizing that that is not true for all of their consumers and their audience that they serve, the community that they ultimately serve. So they engaged us to identify and understand what is a space that we could impact and affect from a society level that would make that purpose true for all. And when we look at Black consumers, we look at the Black diaspora, but particularly in the United States, we realize there's a pain point that makes, that's a real barrier and challenge to opportunities for Black women and girls. And you guys, I'm sure, have seen in social media these stories, especially we're in back to school time. So you see young kids being sent home from school because their traditionally Black or protective styles are not quote unquote acceptable. But what we did with Dove is not just look at this from a surface level of being a beauty problem or a superficial problem about appearance. This is a problem that has an impact in racial equity and the opportunities that are afforded in education and in the workforce to people of color, to Black people in particular. So that's one instance where we said, there was an opportunity for us to communicate to the world, here's a problem. And a business in the private sector like Unilever and Dove could say, we are going to help use our platforms and our influence to create awareness around this problem. And not only that, we're actually going to put our money where our mouth is, and we are going to help change the systemic issues around this. And that, to me, is the gold standard of how we connect business and society. And the return and the reward for the business is the affinity and awareness for how committed that business is, or that brand is, to community and society. So it's driven by purpose. The reward is growth.
And on that, Orlena, can you just elaborate a bit around how community was involved in the process? And
oh, yeah.
mentioned the Black community.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because for those who are familiar, one of my favorite articles I ever read was some years ago about collective impact. And I think Stanford put out in this, social review, this concept of collective impact, and we see it in practice, but this particular exercise of building, and this has been a movement that has been building over the last 3 years, specifically around legislation. But the collective impact model and the community comes into play is when you actually create that movement from the ground up, not the top down. So remember, we talked about the ivory tower and this idea of business. No, it's really you're engaging the community. So one of the first things that we did was engage civil organizations and social impact organizations in the Black community to really lead the effort and the work. And we have amassed, I think, 86 different organizations in what is called the Crown Coalition, which is really a consortium of NGOs and organizations that have done community work, civil rights organizations for generations. And so these are the folks who have 15,000 members, 200,000 members, and it's their voice that's ultimately leading and informing the work that we do. It's also their voice and their platforms that's spreading the word and galvanizing communities nationwide to support this movement at a national level and a local level. So I think that community impact model is really important, how we activate it and how we engage the community, but it's not us telling the community what we want to do and how we want to do it and how we need to utilize them to do it. It's us listening, engaging, and really supporting those who have the power to move on the ground.
I mean, that's fantastic. And what I would say is congratulations on the work you've already done. And I have no doubt through the work you're doing, there's going to be much more change. And I think one of the things I observe from what you've said is this power of brands, but also companies like Joy Collective to unite and bring together these forces and make a collective impact. And earlier on, Scott, you talked about this passion you have every day you wake up and you're excited and you have this mission. And you briefly touched on it, but I would love for you to kind of share with the audience what made you start State Bags in the first place?
Well, I touched on it, but in 2009, we started this nonprofit summer camp called Camp Power. Started with like 68 kids. I convinced them to, believe in me and come with me into the woods of Pennsylvania. And it turned into this crazy phenomenon where we now have over 250 kids every summer. And we've watched kids start at 9 years old, turn into, 18-year-old staff members. And we started seeing this recurring, unfortunate theme of kids coming to camp or during the school year when we'd see them at our events during the year, carrying their stuff in trash bags or ripped shopping bags. And we were like, my wife and I were like, this is insane. Like there's all these companies that are doing incredible work for kids overseas, but there wasn't a real focus from for-profits on kids locally here in our own backyard. And we were seeing it, time and time again, just not just with the trash bag phenomenon, but just like spending time in the neighborhoods and getting to know the struggles and really understanding the issues going on. So we wanted to start a company that wasn't just another, socially conscious company. We wanted to like blow it out of the water because, again, I wanted these kids to be proud of me and our staff members to say like, they get it. Like they listened and they understood and they took the time and like they acted. And so we started State Bags in 2013, originally as a 1-for-1. So with every bag we sold, we would donate or hand deliver a fully stocked backpack to American kids in situations of need at our bag drop events, which were these rallies with hundreds of people and DJs, and we made it a whole party. But beyond that, we, as years went on, we started realizing that the needs of the country were evolving and we needed to evolve too. So we kind of parted ways with our 1-for-1 model and we turned it into a much more flexible mission where for every bag we sell, we support American kids, families, and communities in need, but in the ways they need it most. And the reason why we changed it was because I was doing a big initiative in Flint, Michigan, and we were going to donate tens of thousands of bags, and we were going to do this big initiative and all this stuff. And a principal said to me, this is amazing. We're so appreciative, but what we really need is for people to understand that our water is still poisoned. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, we can't keep just like, pigeonholing ourselves and like pushing this down people's throats. Like, we need to actually evolve. So we changed our mission, and we've started doing much more around our What Do We Tell the Kids platform, which takes on really tough social issues that most for-profit companies don't want to go near. And we really just come at it, and we're not shy about losing Instagram followers, email subscribers, customers, because our goal, as cheesy as it sounds, it's true. We just want to be on the right side of history, and we just want to make those, we've committed to, really proud of us and feel like we're actually doing something good.
Wow. What a story. I mean, what's most striking, Scott, is that journey from that first trip into the woods to a true startup that's really making an impact. And you talked about that transition you made from the one-for-one model towards really accommodating the needs of the young people in different local areas. I suppose we wouldn't usually ask this question in a panel, but since it's all about communities, would you be able to touch on what are some of the root causes that's creating these challenges for young people
in these communities?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Orlena touched on it, that there's systemic things that have been built, in this country that have become unbelievable hurdles and obstacles. And we are living in a very unlevel playing field. And if this comes back to the comment before, like, if you have the platform and if you have the resources or the power or the voice, like, how can you not do what you can to whatever you can to level that playing field just a little bit? Obviously, like, we have many, many years to go, and there's a lot of work to be done. But, if you have the ability to do what you can to make that dent, like, how can you turn a blind eye? Even if that means, like, cutting your profits in half or in a quarter. I mean, we've had so many conversations with people being like, so wait, you're giving away this much of your revenue? And we're like, yeah, we are, because like, that's who we are, and that's what we were built to do. And if you're not on board with that, like, that's okay. Like, but we're going to keep going that direction, because it's just, there's a DNA of humans. And if you create a company of your own, that DNA bleeds into your business. And again, it's nice to work with your wife, who just feels as strongly as I do about our commitment and our love and our passion for making a difference, that even her as CEO was like, yeah, I guess we'll spend, we'll just let all that money go that we worked so hard to earn, and we'll donate it to this organization. We'll put it towards this initiative and donate 50,000 bags to these guys, or whatever it is. We do it because, that's what we're built to do.
Amazing. And one thing you talked about is, for you at Steak Bags, you tackle some of the issues that other for-profit companies might not do so. And I can imagine there's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, bag companies in the world. But how do you think that your mission differentiates you from other companies in the market, Scott?
Well, I think it's real. I think if you dig into it a little bit, you notice that we're not doing this for, like, there's no hidden agenda here. It's who we are. But, I think also that we're in this moment right now where we just feel we've always felt very energized by, like, doing something bigger. And to be just another company who, just sells stuff was never of interest to us. We wanted to really be pioneers in the space that people look to, just like we looked to socially conscious brands, when it wasn't that popular, but they were doing it kind of like really smartly and thinking about it in ways that most companies weren't. I love the fact that, there's a lot of people out there who heard about our company and just saw the work that we did on the What Do We Tell the Kids platform, and talking about mass incarceration and, the national anthem protests, the Flint water crisis, Black Lives Matter, when nobody was talking about Black Lives Matter in 2016, and thinking, wow, these guys like really take risks and they're not afraid to do it because it feels very real. I'm proud of that, and I'm going to keep going until someone tells us to stop, and then I'll probably keep going anyway. So yeah.
Brilliant.
But I also want to point out too, you mentioned like starting a company, like we had no idea what we were doing. I just want to say for the young entrepreneurs out there, like you go on these panels and it feels like everyone's got all their stuff figured out.
Yeah.
We were very green, very, very green. And if you believe in what you're doing, and if you're incredibly passionate about it, and you think that you can truly, truly make a difference and make those people proud, it keeps you going. But man, we hit a lot of roadblocks. So I don't want to appear as the guy who had all the answers, because we definitely did not.
I can relate. We can relate.
I think so.
Entrepreneurs can relate. It's an uphill battle to do the good stuff.
And that's just real. That's real.
It is very.
If that doesn't inspire the audience, I don't know what will. And Max, can you tell us about All Inspired and also your unique charity partnership model?
Sure. So I started Awe Inspired a few years ago with my mother, actually, Scott. I'm also in a family business. My mother, her background is she's been in the jewelry space for her career on the wholesale side. My mother was recovering from cancer. She's a 3-time cancer survivor a few years ago. And we were talking about how there really isn't a beautiful jewelry product or gift that was designed to give and honor survivors and honor the strength that they have and all that they've been through. We also recognize that jewelry is a very high margin good. There's a lot of perceived value, and there's an enormous opportunity to give away some of that profit and build it into the bottom line and really build a double bottom line business. And so we launched our brand, and we had some difficulties as we started figuring out what our products exactly would be and how to find product market fit. And we eventually saw that there was this trend in the marketplace of women wearing gold medallions, and gold medallions were very much in vogue, but they all had male saints or kings emblazoned on them. And so we had this idea to honor iconic female heroes and goddesses on the product, to be that real symbol of strength intended for survivors or people needing that wearable inspiration. And from day one, we've given away at least 20% of proceeds on every single order to the charity of your choice. And so we initially partnered with 4 incredible organizations: Cancer Care, RAIN, the Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and the Trevor Project, as organizations that were really aligned with our values. And since then, we've really used Goddess as a vehicle to support all of the various, causes that are important to our team and to our organization. Last May, we partnered with the American Nurses Foundation to create a Florence Nightingale necklace and gave the proceeds from that to frontline workers battling the pandemic. Gave away hundreds of pieces to nurses who wore it under their scrubs as this wearable reminder of their strength. The next month, George Floyd, when he was murdered in my hometown of Minneapolis, we partnered with the NAACP in Minneapolis to give 100% of proceeds from our Harriet Tubman piece to support their efforts. And that's a program that continues to this day. In November of last year, we released a Kamala Harris necklace to celebrate her historic candidacy, and partnered with Emily's List, which is a progressive political action committee that empowers minority women with progressive ideals to run for office. Gave them the proceeds for that. And I think just this year, the campaign really most important to me personally was we partnered with the Marsha P. Johnson Institute to produce a Marsha P. Johnson necklace and celebrate Black trans beauty. Gave 100% of proceeds to them and gave Black trans women a beautiful wearable symbol of their strength. And it's just been such a beautiful thing to be able to create art and wearable art, but also have it be meaningful and make a statement, and really prove that you can be a luxury brand and you can still, create desirable, luxurious experiences, but have doing good be really built into your business model, and really have, the impact you have on the community grow as your business grows. And so it's something I'm really passionate, advocating for. There's so many luxury brands, there's so many luxury goods. They're really making pretty amazing margins on their products. Everyone has a lot of room to give a little bit more back.
Incredible. What an inspiring story.
Awesome.
And what
Thank you.
amazing start. Many congratulations, Max.
Thank you.
And what I love most is all three of you are not only talking about community and talking about your mission, but you're making it real and you're taking real action. Orlena, you talked about, we can see the clear impact you're having with the Crown Act and this movement to tackle systematic racism. And Scott, you touched on the inequalities in society and how State Bags is addressing that one kid at a time. And Max, I love how giving back, similar to both Scott and Orlena, it's ingrained in the very fabric of your business model. It's not this outsourced thing as we touched on before. I suppose on the flip side of that, and it was touched on when we talked about consumers, and I think it's always important to talk about communities, people, but also consumers have become more conscious. And I suppose my question to you is, how do you think we can, you're the opposite example, but how do you think we can prevent greenwashing, which is where brands say something, but they don't actually do it?
Are you, who would you like to answer? I'm happy to try and
do it.
Yeah, so, and I'm going to try not to sound too militant, but I don't think that we have to try to prevent it. I think you have a new generation of consumers. They're not my generation, they're my children's generation, college age, Gen Z, who I think for us, we were advocating, right? For my generation, we were advocating. I think you have a new generation that is requiring and demanding, and they are channeling their action and their dollars, if we're talking about the US, accordingly. So I think one thing is we can see in the last 12 to 18 months that there have been challenges in different industries where industries have to speak up, private industry has to speak up, has to actually commit, and then are held accountable to that commitment. So we're seeing a younger generation of consumers, especially the voice that they use on social media, to make it very clear what they accept and they don't accept. I think for those of us who have influence over brands and companies or own those companies, I think it's incumbent to us to do exactly what all of us have talked about today, which is, one, understand and acknowledge the role that we play in society, understand that doing good and doing well is not mutually exclusive. I think that's one of the biggest challenges a lot of private industry sees. And so I think it's then leaning into what that means that is meaningful for us and impacts people's lives ultimately. But I think that the floodgates are open. And I think we are facing a very scrutinizing and unforgiving audience and consumer group that I applaud.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
so.
It's
I
good.
think so. I think we're seeing examples of that, and we're seeing examples of more, you know, encouraged and inspired, purpose-driven work that gives back to the communities. So that's that. I'm banking on it, and then there are folks like Max and Scott and I, which will continue to push to make sure that it happens all the way around.
I have a kind of top of mind story that I actually just happened yesterday. But last year, when we were trying to figure out, you know, as a product that makes things for people on the go, when nobody was going anywhere, we had to figure out, you know, what our giving and our mission initiatives would be. And throughout Camp Power 2020, which we had to take virtual, there was a lot of talk on these sessions about how concerned kids and parents were about the coming school year. They didn't have proper Wi-Fi. They couldn't, you know, they didn't have the equipment to remote learn. And, you know, they weren't going to be focused on these Zoom sessions with 30 other kids in the room. And they were going to basically lose an entire school year. And we just went into action mode, and we put together this whole virtual tutoring initiative where we served hundreds of kids in underfunded neighborhoods with one-on-one free tutoring for all these kids, tutors from across the world, like just putting in their time. We funded it. We paid the tutors. It was $0 for the families. And I bring it up because there was a group of kids. One of the tutors was a teacher at a school in New York City, and started talking about her, you know, sessions with one of her students. And some of her high school kids said that they wanted to take part, and they formed this little group, and they decided that they were going to put together this whole program, and that they were going to pitch me on how they could bring it to a school in the Bronx or Brooklyn. And they put together this unbelievable program, and they started putting sessions together for like groups of 15 kids to help them with whatever they needed, their homework or whatever it was. And today I got an email saying that they're going to continue it without my guidance, without anybody asking them to. They're going to continue it. And these are juniors in high school. And I thought to myself, this is the future. These people are going to work for companies. They're going to aspire to work for companies. They're going to shop for and with companies that are doing things like this, that are real and genuine and thoughtful and impactful. And if our next generation is going to be able to take that into the world, I hope we're in a good place. And the good news is there's a lot of time in front of us, and there's a lot of age that's going to happen. And this next generation is really going to impress us, just like Orlena said, and they're going to hold all of us business owners accountable for continuing to do the work and do it well.
Amazing.
Amen to that. The only thing I would add is, you know, we're all learning so much every day. And I think that's something I try to talk to my team about. You know, I have team members who say, you know, we don't want to make a statement about Afghanistan. We don't know how to defend ourselves. We have no one on the team that's an expert on Middle East politics. And it's like, you know, we need to just act with humility. We're all learning. We're all trying to just take on all the rapid changes around the world, be it with sustainability, be it with social justice. I think one example coming to mind, there's this big movement in jewelry to adopt lab-grown gemstones as a sustainable alternative. Lab-grown gemstones actually have a really negative emission profile, we're learning. And so while some people may advocate this is a really great solution, there's new science emerging that say this may not actually be the case. And I think instead of pointing fingers and accusing people of greenwashing or, you know, trying to manipulate the conversation, I think we all need to just be open to the dialogue that what we know now may be different than what we know tomorrow. And we all really just need to work together towards the common goal, and enough with the finger pointing and blaming.
It's well put.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I don't think there's a better way to end. And thank you all. Thank you, Orlena. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Scott. I think the audience would agree. It's